It was kind of a solemn sentence that I read in the Fifth Testimonies, page 713. Now, of course, this was written in the original setting just before the turn of the century in the late 1900s, because there was a national Sunday law that was brewing in Congress, and unless the Lord had diverted it would have gone through. But I really believe the same statement is true of today as well. So it's often that God allows things to happen in an earlier time so that counsel is written for us in the last days. And it says, we as a people have not accomplished the work which God has committed to us. We are not ready for the issue to which the enforcement of the Sunday law will bring us. So, even though it was on the horizon and they were expecting it to happen, the Lord revealed, tell them, wait, Adventists are not ready for this. And I think it's true today. It's not as much on the horizon right now as it was then, but we can see in things that are happening that Sunday laws are not too far off, and yet God's people are not ready for that event to happen. So it's a solemn thought. In Daniel chapter 3, verse 12, we see that even in the Old Testament there are examples to really help us to see what is going to happen. It says, there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. You're familiar with the story. And as Nebuchadnezzar thought about that image that he had seen in his dream, he decided to make a better one. This one was all of gold. And so he called upon everyone to worship the golden image. But the report came back that these three men wouldn't do it. Well, that's exactly what will happen in regard to Sunday laws. That there will be passed a law, and the report, of course, will come to the leadership and to others that are watching. They're not bowing down. They're not yielding to this decree. And so it will bring us to a crisis. Also in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16, it says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So it's going to get serious, that there will actually develop a death decree for not worshiping on Sunday. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads. So it's interesting how this ties in with Daniel, because it was an image the king set up and everybody was supposed to bow. And here in Revelation we have an image and everybody's supposed to bow. However, there's two kinds of people that bow to this image. There are those that really believe that Sunday is the day to worship on, and so they bow to the image. Other people know it's not the day of worship, but they're scared. They can't make a living, or they might go to jail, or they might lose their life, and so they receive it in the hand. They go along with it, in other words. But the ones that won't go along with it, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, are going to get in deep trouble as a result of standing up for what they know to be right. We know that God delivered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And of course, ultimately, everyone that stands for the Sabbath will be delivered, but it may be through death, some of them, before they are delivered. There's another story in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that is to teach us about this, and that's in the book of Esther, chapter 3, verse 8. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. They don't have the same laws as we do. They don't worship on the same day that we do. And their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws. So they say, not only are they strange, and they don't have the same laws, but they don't even listen to you, king. They don't even do what you tell them to do. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. He didn't say who they were, and even if he had, he wouldn't have understood that Esther was one of them. But as most kings are, anything that gets in their way, they're ready to get rid of it because they don't want anything in their way. So he fell for this plan of Haman. Now, all those stories are to warn us about what is going to happen in the last days in regard to Sunday laws. Now, next we want to look at what are the factors that lead to Sunday laws. Why do they take place anyway? How is it possible, and especially in this country, a country of religious freedom, how is it that Sunday laws can happen? Well, unfortunately, yes.
Well, I work for a Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
He's a member of the Peavine Baptist Church there in Fort Oglethorpe, and it's a very, very huge church, very large. And what you're alluding to, how can the Sunday law come? It's not so much that they're thumping the Bible or grandstanding that, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. Just recently, they had a series of meetings on a Sunday, several meetings, and even into the night, Sunday night, and they feel that their families don't attend. They have too many activities doing other things on Sunday that they're not part of it. So it's starting out to unify the families tighter, to bond with keeping the Sunday. And they don't, the pastor and some official from the Baptist church out of Texas or something were reiterating over and over again that if you're a business owner, you need now to practice and learn how to close your doors on Sunday. And one of the other fellows I work with, he's a Methodist, and his father is the pastor in Rainbow. And he commented that likewise they have been talking about the same thing. The families are not attending, they want more attendance and more commitment. So I don't know, but that might be sounds good, to start with. But,
yeah, it's a smoke screen.
Yeah.
I lost a book down in Brazil. I'm probably going to have to buy another one, but I hope I can get one. But many years ago, a lawyer examined the entire history of the United States in regard to Sunday laws, and he wrote a book called Dateline Sunday. And there's a number of things in that book that are very interesting. One is that through time, see, we've had Sunday laws ever since the Puritans. They're on the books. And there have been some times when people were trying to get rid of these Sunday laws, but they never have been successful in getting rid of them. So, one of the factors in the situation is how the Supreme Court has looked at it. Only for a brief period did the Supreme Court say, these are religious laws and we have no business having them. But most of the time, including the current time, the Supreme Court says these are not religious laws. And so, it opens the door for a Sunday law with a smokescreen of claiming it's not religious. But all through the ages, there have been people that have said, wait a minute, everybody knows they're religious. It's a no-brainer that they're religious. That's why you're doing it. And yet, the chief justices will stand up and say, no, it's not. It's crazy. It's just unreal. But we're not going to look at those factors. We're going to look at the ones that God said will bring about Sunday laws. And sad to say, part of it is us, our failure. The first one comes from Colporter Ministry, page 123. Many of our people have been blind to the importance of the very books that were most needed. Had tact and skill then been shown in the sale of these books, the Sunday law movement would not be where it is today. Well, the first one that comes to your mind is great controversy. We have not circulated great controversy like we should. The colporters have gotten wrapped up in health books, which are good, and Bible story books. They've gotten wrapped up in a lot of books, but they haven't pushed great controversy like it needs to be pushed. And then, of course, we have groups going around distributing free copies, and that's great, but there's not enough people that are involved in doing that. And we're as a result, there's a lot of ignorance out there in regard to Sunday laws and in regard to the issues behind the scenes. And then there are other books as well. Actually, every one of the 5 books that we call the Conflict of the Ages series make the Sabbath issue plain, even if you only have one. They make it plain. Great Controversy is the best because it goes into so much of the history of it. But we have not been faithful in getting these books out. And so we are going to be the ones responsible to a large degree why the Sunday laws fall upon us. Now, fortunately, back in the late 1800s, Adventists really got stirred up and they started, getting the word out and they defeated the National Sunday Law. So that was a blessing. But, while there's freedom, we need to be busy. Another thing, the Liberty Campaign is not supported like it ought to be. That's the magazine that needs to go to every lawyer, every judge, every thought leader of the whole country, so that they can be aware. And we're right in the campaign now. And, there ought to be liberal donations to the Liberty magazine so that it can affect people's thinking. Yes.
Lincoln Steve put out a nice sermon for that day, but we didn't use it here.
Yeah. Well, I don't like canned sermons either, but I preached on religious liberty that day. And I believe that we really need to awaken to our responsibility. Yes.
We did have a guest speaker that day. He spoke on religious liberty, but his sermon could have come out of the right-wing playbook.
Oh, really?
Evangelical, secular humanism and all that stuff.
Oh, well. Sorry about that, but you're going to get a straight one tonight. Another factor is this from Paulson Collection 333. Plans of serious import to the people of God are advancing in an underhand manner among the clergymen of various denominations. And the object of this covert maneuvering is to win popular favor for the enforcement of Sunday sacredness. Now, they will say this is just a family day. That's all we're after, just a family day. It's not true. I mean, there might be some people that are fooled, but the majority know why they want it. And always through history, as you read that book, always through history, the preachers have been the ones that have pushed it the most. It's not a family day with them. It is trying to get more people to sit in the pew on Sunday morning. But as others have brought out, if you get them in the pew on Sunday morning because they can't do anything else, what have you got? And the chances are you won't get them anyway. If they can't go to the store and they can't open their business, they're still probably not going to come to church. Yes.
I attended a local Chamber of Commerce meeting in Norwich, New York, many years ago, probably at least 40 years ago. And they were tossing this around. They were urging the legislature in Albany to work on this. And I made a speech to that group. I said that I don't need a law to have me go to church on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And the local radio station manager seemed to appreciate my speech.
Sensible people recognize that. I mean, if the preachers cannot be inspired to get people to come to church, then why make a law to make them come to church? It doesn't make any sense. But if the people can be led to favor a Sunday law, then the clergy intend to exert their united influence to obtain a religious amendment to the Constitution and compel the nation to keep Sunday. Again, this is what they were doing before. And it may not be identical in the movements at the end, but it's probably fairly likely that most of the same things will happen here in the end. So the second reason is that the pastors are working, but they're working in an underhanded way to try to build a platform to where people will welcome Sunday laws. They've been frustrated, because it hasn't worked too fast. It's been slow. But I'm sure they're getting encouraged now that things are moving a little better, and they're hoping to win. Here's another cause, and this is why we, with the knowledge we have, can be of help. From Last Day Events 125, the Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are concealing the true issue, and many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whether the undercurrent is tending. So there's a lot of ignorance. There are people that know what they're up to, and they're working in a secretive way, but they're fooling a lot of people who don't know what the end result of this is going to be, what will be the final outcome of it. Some of them are going to be caught in the trap when it's too late, but they cooperate with it because they think it's a good thing. They are working in blindness. They do not see that if a Protestant government sacrifices the principles that have made them a free, independent nation, and through legislation brings into the Constitution principles that will propagate papal falsehood and papal delusion, they are plunging into the Roman horrors of the Dark Ages. So they don't see that. They don't realize that when the government does that, we're headed for dictatorship. And a lot of people are going to be caught, besides Seventh-day Adventists, in that net. And, of course, they'll be forced to go one way or the other to become an Adventist or to go along with the crowd. But we need to recognize that not everyone's evil that's involved in this, Many of them just don't see clearly what the issue is. Here's another cause of why Sunday laws will happen. Maranatha, page 176. Satan puts his interpretation upon events. And they, talking about leading men, they think as he would have them, that the calamities which fill the land are a result of Sunday breaking. Now, I noticed in this book that there was a time when people, some people anyway, recognized and stated very clearly, people in high office, they said, we are not a Christian nation. But today, you can't hardly find a Christian who doesn't think that we were supposed to be a Christian nation. The confusion on that issue has been very consistent throughout the history of our country. We allow full privileges for Christians, but we are not supposed to be a Christian nation. Because when you think that we're a Christian nation, then you're going to persecute the atheists and persecute the Muslims and persecute anybody else that doesn't agree with Christianity. And so, you know, we were set up wisely by the forefathers to not be a Christian nation. Yes.
One of the pastors whose church I visit on rotation, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, made a remark on his sermon about taking back this country.
Yeah.
Well, my response to that, when I respond to them, is to take it back where? Back to stocks and pillories?
Yeah. Well, that's where it's going to go, probably. Then it says, because they're fooled in thinking, well, these disasters are coming because we're disobedient. Thinking
That's true.
is true, but opposite to what they think, right? Thinking to appease the wrath of God, these influential men make laws enforcing Sunday observance. They think that by exalting this false rest day higher and still higher, compelling obedience to the Sunday law, the spurious Sabbath, they are doing God's service. So they're twisted around, and yet they're going full steam because they think if we can just make Sunday the day of worship in this country, the disasters will stop falling upon us. But of course, it's the exact opposite. It is their disobedience that is bringing the disasters. Now, who actually are the ones that are going to cause these Sunday laws? 5th Testimonies 4:50 and 51. Men of position and reputation will join with the lawless and the vile to take counsel against the people of God. Now, for a time, Seventh-day Adventists had to endure Sunday laws that were being enforced. And many Adventists were put in prison, were fined, were put on the work gang because of keeping Sabbath. And what was very interesting was that, for instance, some of them went to jail for splitting wood on Sunday for someone that would have been freezing cold if they hadn't had the wood. Down the street, there was, but it was only the Sabbath keeper, the one that are watching and looking, and men of position and reputation are going to join with these people who are trying to create trouble for other people. Here's what they're going to use to do it. Wealth. So there'll be a lot of money put behind this project. Genius. People that are very smart, very intelligent are going to bend every effort of their mind. How are we going to make it hard for these people? Education will be used. All these things will combine to cover them with contempt, to come up with arguments that make Sabbath keepers look stupid in the eyes of other people. Persecuting rulers, ministers, and church members will conspire against them with voice and pen by boasts, threats, and ridicule. They will seek to overthrow their faith. So they're going to try to trip us up so we think we're wrong, and of course convince everyone else that we're wrong, to have a tide that's very hard to resist. This is already underway, but it's going to increase. Going on, it says, by false representations and angry appeals, they will stir up the passions of the people. I've been exposed to some of these that are mild, really. I remember one person, I won't say where he was from, but he was an Adventist, and he was talking to the pastors at the Georgia Cumberland pastors meeting. And he leaned over the front bench, and he got very vigorous. He said, the reason that we don't have enough money is these self-supporters. That's the reason that we don't have enough money. And I thought, boy, he doesn't know I'm a self-supporter. He would really go after me if he could, And people get stirred up about things. And they want to really make it happen. So that's going to take place in regard to the Sunday law. Not having, thus saith the Scriptures, to bring against the advocates of the Bible Sabbath, they will resort to oppressive enactments to supply the lack. When I took a class on preaching in school, the teacher said one time that the pastor wrote in the margin of his notes, argument weak, shout here. And it's so human for people. When they don't have solid evidence, then they will do something to try to make people think it's true. And so they're going to pass laws to pressure us. To secure, now this is a very significant sentence, to secure popularity and patronage, legislators will yield to the demand for a Sunday law. So we could call this a grassroots movement. Now, the leaders, the pastors, and other people that are, have religious reasons for doing this, are in a sense the instigators, but they get the people convinced that we need Sunday laws. And so there is so many people that push the legislators, that the legislators, some of them know that this doesn't make sense to do this, but they want to be elected, so they're going to yield to that pressure to go ahead and have a Sunday law. Yes.
When Jesus was arrested, there were people in that mob that had praised him just shortly before that.
Yeah. It's really sad, isn't it? So, just to review, why is it that the Sunday laws succeed and get passed? Well, it's number one, failure to distribute, great controversy and so forth, other materials that are very good. There's a small book that, I don't agree with many of the things the author does, but it's a very inexpensive way to really pass out a book that exposes the whole thing, and it's called the National Sunday Law. And, that's another avenue that we have. We have a lot of things that we could be using. Number two, well, it's been the plan of the papacy all along, ever since the Dark Ages. They wanted to get back to where they were, where they could enforce, so they've been working on it. Also, it has been planned by Protestant ministers who are eager to get rid of the competition on Sundays. We also found that some ministers are blind to the outcome. When they actually get the ball rolling and they start looking back, they'll say, I wish we hadn't been a part of that, but it'll be too late. Also, we find that the meaning of disasters are misunderstood, and they blame God for these disasters. Now, it is true God could stop disasters. He has power, but the cause of the disasters are that the Spirit is being withdrawn, that God is having to withdraw, and as a result, Satan has more room to work. And so really, Satan is the one that's bringing most of the disasters. And yet they blame God for those disasters. And then legislators will yield to the popular demand and get a national Sunday law. Now, as I mentioned, we already have Sunday laws on the books. If they wanted to enforce them, you would have to quit doing any work on Sunday, because there's enough laws around here that could put you in jail for doing anything on Sunday. But we're looking really specifically toward the national Sunday law. In the Seventh Bible Commentary, 977, it says, when our nation in its legislative councils shall enact laws to bind the consciences of men in regard to their religious privileges, enforcing Sunday observance, and bringing oppressive power to bear against those who keep the seventh-day Sabbath, the law of God will, to all intents and purposes, be made void in our land. And national apostasy, notice what it's called. When a national Sunday law is passed, this country has committed national apostasy. And national apostasy will be followed by national ruin. And we already have people predicting ruin for the U.S. So apparently it is becoming visible that this country will not be able to continue as it always has, but that there's coming a day. However, as Adventists, we know when that day will be. National ruin does not come now. It does not come until after the National Sunday Law. And it doesn't say how soon after the National Sunday Law. So, there's still some ambiguity about the national ruin. But the fact is guaranteed that national ruin will follow this national apostasy. Now, to some extent, there has been a national apostasy already because of the blue laws that are defended by the Supreme Court. And it has come before them again and again, and there was only a brief period where the Supreme Court did not defend the blue laws. They have stopped ball games on Sunday and various, because they really do not agree that the blue laws are religious. It's amazing. But we can tell from this reference that's not what this is talking about. It's talking about the actual passing of a national Sunday law by the Congress. Now, when will the national Sunday law be made? In Last Day Events 227, says, the Lord has shown me clearly that the image of the beast will be formed before probation closes. For it is to be the great test for the people of God, by which their eternal destiny will be decided. Now, we'd like to know more specifically, I'm sure, but it doesn't say. But at least it's very clear that the National Sunday Law will be passed before the close of probation, because it's going to be the test for the whole world, and especially for Seventh-day Adventists. How many Seventh-day Adventists are going to stick to Sabbath keeping when there's a National Sunday Law? That's the test. Yes.
Well, won't there be rapid persecution by that point?
Yeah, I think the blue laws are going to be agitated again, even before the National Sunday Law. And then, of course, the Sunday Law, there's more than one Sunday Law that'll be passed, so there'll be steps. Yes.
When the Sunday Law is passed, will our churches will still be open or will close them?
Well, you know, as you look back to the Dark Ages, you kind of see the progression that they have. In the beginning, they won't try to make us close on Sabbath. They'll just try to stop us from working on Sunday. But when we do what we're told to do, stop working on Sunday, when we do that, and they see, well, we didn't get anywhere, you know, then they start making laws against worshiping on Sabbath. And that's where we have to draw the line. We have to keep the Sabbath anyway, irregardless of what they say. Yes.
How do we do that? Are we going to church or will we just stay in the house and worship?
Well, in the Dark Ages, I'm sure they started keeping Sabbath in the churches, but as it got tougher, they would go out in somebody's home, or they'd go into the woods finally and try to find a secret place to meet. We don't have to put ourselves unnecessarily in the path of danger. And Russia's been a good example for us. The people would meet in a different house every Sabbath. They would try their best to only let true Adventists know about the meetings, because they would have informers that would squeal on them. And so they would try their best to meet secretly. And so on. We'll have to do that, I'm sure. Yes.
Now in some countries.
In some countries now, that's right. So, you know, this is okay. Yes.
I think we're told that when we cannot do other things on Sunday, that's the day we can spread the word.
Right. Right.
Go to work.
She said, actually, they'll be worse off because we'll have all day Sunday. You know, right now, most people don't feel they can give Sunday for missionary work. They have too many other things they need to do. So God's going to solve that problem, and He's going to give us a whole day for missionary work. Yes.
But I thought that they will oblige us to go to church on Sunday, their own church.
Yeah, well, they want that too. Those kind of rules will be in there too. Why didn't you show up for church Sunday?
We don't know all the details.
No, we don't. But we do know it's progressive. In other words, it starts mild, and it just keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Yes.
In today's political climate, I could see this happening very quickly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be much progression. It could be almost overnight.
Yeah.
Presidential decree.
Yeah.
With all the hate in the world, in the country, hate against all the killings and the hate against Muslims and, you know,
Yeah.
they go very quick.
Yeah, it's true.
And the future president is
Yes, yeah.
he is the one.
Okay, there is a blessing in this, though. You know, God never lets trials come unless there's a blessing in it. And Last Day Events, page 179, says, the great issue so near at hand, and she means enforcement of Sunday laws, will weed out those whom God has not appointed, and he will have a pure, true, sanctified ministry prepared for the latter rain. Now I hear Adventists disturbed about the pastors they see sometimes, and the kind of things their pastors do, and the kind of things that, are not good. Well, God has a plan. We don't need to get all worked up about that. God has a plan. When the Sunday laws start really getting serious, those pastors are going to leave. They're not going to stay around.
I can't see the reference for that.
Oh, that's Last Day Events, page 179. So, I try to encourage people, don't leave the church because you see some bad pastors or even some bad leaders. Don't take that position. God has a plan. And the plan is right here. He is going to work through the Sunday laws to have only good ministers, pure, true, sanctified ministers.
And membership, same thing.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Wheaton cares about it.
That's right. That's right. Christian Service, page 50, says the substitution of the laws of men for the law of God, the exaltation by merely human authority of Sunday in place of the Bible Sabbath is the last act in the drama. So once the National Sunday Law is passed, we are at the end. And it won't be long until the close of probation, and the final work will take place. It says, when this substitution becomes universal, God will reveal himself. Yes.
That word universal, I take to be worldwide.
Oh, yes, definitely. And in a later study, we'll look at the death decree, but the final result of Sunday laws is a universal death decree that on a certain day, every Sabbath keeper will be killed. That's what this is talking about. When that day is arrived, God will reveal himself and he will deliver his people.
Like the days of Esther.
Yeah, just the same thing. How should we react to the enforcement of Sunday laws? Now, one of the problems that previous Adventists had is that they were mixed up about this. And so when the Sunday laws were being pushed, they went right out and worked in plain sight. They figured, hey, I have a right to work on Sunday, and I should stand up for Sabbath by working on Sunday. Well, the Lord revealed, no, that's not the way we should be. Here's an interesting one from the 6th volume of the biography of Ellen White, page 264 and 5. It says, our brethren in Basel Publishing House took a very firm, unrelenting stand on the question of running the publishing house on Sunday. They defied the authorities, and the authorities closed up the house. That's not a sensible thing to do, is it? Sure, our enemies are wrong, but we hurt our own selves in our movement if we take a belligerent stand. Yeah. They defied the authorities, and the authorities closed up the house, sold the furniture and facilities to pay the fines, and lodged Elder Holster in jail for 40 days. So we lost our publishing house, which if we had been willing to work 5 days a week instead of 6, we could have still had a publishing house. In fact, if we have enough people, but we need to comply on Sunday. Review and Herald, on April 20, 1911. Sunday can be used for carrying forward various lines of work that will accomplish much for the Lord. On this day, open-air meetings and cottage meetings can be held. So, we have an evangelistic meeting on Sunday, or we have a group study, or even a single Bible study with somebody. We spend the day spreading the gospel. That's a good way to do it. House-to-house work can be done. So they want us to do religious things on Sunday, so we'll go house to house and pray with people and talk to people about spiritual things. Those who write can devote this day to writing their articles. So in your own home, privacy of your own home, you're busy writing articles on the truth. Whenever it is possible, let religious services be held on Sunday. Now, I think this is being stretched today to say that we're going to have services on Sabbath and Sunday so that for the convenience of the people, they can go whichever day they want to go. I think that's stretching what this is talking about.
That's Saturday night in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, right. Yes.
So, would we open our church on Sunday and come here to worship?
Well, if it's for a different purpose, it shouldn't be an alternative to Sabbath worship. But you could have an evangelistic meeting on Sunday in the church or in some other hall, in some other place. It'd be all right.
Meeting for Bible study in the church is not quoted a worship service,
Right, right.
as in divine service in the morning.
But if we ran the Sabbath service and the Sunday service alike, I don't think that's what this is talking about.
What if, excuse me, Pastor. Okay, for example, John. Sorry, Doug. He goes to Methodist Church on Sunday,
Yeah,
but he'll also worship, somewhere else, let's say, on Sabbath,
yeah.
during these times. So, how do we view that? Like, okay, what if Old Village Chapel will go to Methodist Church on Sunday? What's the difference?
Yeah. Well, probably the whole church going wouldn't be the best. But for some people to go is good. Let me just tell you about my mother. My mother is going to turn 97 this year, and a few years ago, and so she was lonely and didn't really have a whole lot to do. She didn't know exactly how to make the best use of her time, and she thought of the idea, why don't I go to this Sunday church over here on Sunday? So she did. Pretty soon they wanted her to play the piano because they didn't have a piano player, and they even asked her to teach the Sunday school lesson. And pretty soon she got Bible studies with some of the people that were going to that church. And so she would study outside of church time, of course, with them. And as a result, actually, the people of that church lost confidence in their pastor, and the church closed down. Now it is a Sabbath-keeping church. Not all the people come, but the most faithful ones, they come. And so, it has its place. I mean, to go there looking for people that you can witness to is a good thing to do. Now, to go there because you think their services are more interesting than Adventist services, that's a different story. And there's some people doing that.
Pastor preaches better.
Yeah.
I think it would be good if we did this more.
Yes.
We need friends.
Yes. Yeah, because, especially here in the South, they don't come to us very well. So we got to go to them. Yeah.
Question about your mom. Did they know that she's an Adventist?
Fairly quickly they did, yeah.
And still they asked her to teach Sunday school lessons?
Yeah, but sometimes the pastor would argue with her, you know, and I think he warned her once or twice about what she should teach. But she'd already won the hearts of the people, and, you know, they listened to her more than they did him.
This is not that unusual a situation.
No, it isn't.
It happens sometimes. Sometimes the Adventists will even be asked to preach a sermon.
Sure. And if you're careful, you know,
Tactful.
and tactful, you can often get a lot of opportunities. Yes.
I go to 6 different Sunday churches in rotation, but I'm very slow about trying to kick people out of there.
Yeah.
I'm working for the pastors. If the people are gonna come, the pastors are gonna have to do it.
Well, you know, if you get to be friends with somebody and then you meet them outside of church, like in their home or whatever, I don't think we have to be reluctant. If they seem interested in truth, I think we can share it. I do think we need to be careful in church. We wouldn't like it if somebody came to our church and was trying to pull away our members. So I think we need to be careful. But in the case of this church, they kept inviting her to do more things.
97 years old?
Yeah.
You know that John sings in the choir up the street.
Uh-huh. Okay. Then it goes on to say, make these meetings intensely interesting. When we have a Sunday meeting, make it really interesting. A lot of these churches are quite dead, you know, to be honest. If you go there and you listen to the pastor, it's pretty dead. And so if we have a really interesting meeting on Sunday, the people will start thinking, that's better than what I'm listening to on Sunday. Sing genuine revival hymns and speak with power and assurance of the Savior's love. By the way, we have a Sunday service in that church now. We're trying to follow what it says here, and we're not getting a lot of people to turn out, but we're trying it anyway. Speak on temperance and on true religious experience. You know, the average church isn't telling people how to live the Christian life. Why? Because in their eyes, if you tell Jesus, you can have me, you're in. They don't worry about how you live the Christian life. They don't worry about teaching people how to do that. And so we can do it. You will thus learn much about how to work and will reach many souls. We'll close with this one. Our time is gone, but Review and Herald of January 1, 1889. We are not ready for this great issue to which the enforcement of the Sunday law will bring us. What do you think we need to do? Do we need to get ready? If we're not ready, we need to get ready. Now, maybe those of you here are more ready than the average Adventist because you're willing to come out on Friday night, you know, which many people are not. But still, we may not be as ready as we ought to be. So there's a work for us to do. Let the members of our churches become missionaries for the Master. No one is ready if they're not a missionary. If they're not reaching out for souls, trying to help other people accept the message, then they're not ready. Let them not linger in ease and indifference, but let them go forth to work for God. Their spiritual muscles have been nearly palsied with inaction. go without the camp. In other words, go outside the Adventist circle, bearing the reproach for Christ and the truth. So that's one way, and it's a big way, that we are to get ready by going out and helping other people. And we don't all have to do it the same way, but we all ought to find a way that we can minister to those not of our faith and try to find people who are sincere and who want to get ready for Jesus coming. And in the process, He gets us ready because we're working to help them. All right?